The Last of Us Part 2, released on June 19th, 2020, developed by Naughty Dog as a sequel to a game released 7 years and 4 days before. A sequel to a game that received universal praise by critics and fans alike, which means that this game has some big shoes to fill. Now, about a week before the game was released, Naughty Dog gave out review copies to some big time reviewers. It was met with nearly universal praise, scoring a 96 on Metacritic with some exceptions, and even reviews that weren't scored at all. The embargo Naughty Dog put in place did not allow the reviewers to speak on the entire second half of the story, which understandably left some people wary on what that could mean. Now, when the game came out, it was met with huge amounts of criticism from users, with the game itself being review bombed, reaching almost a 30, if I'm not mistaken, on Metacritic user reviews. Now, me myself, I don't really believe or really like reviews, or at least the way reviews are constructed today. Many different outlets have different review models and philosophies, which plays into what score they give each game. And this is a huge reason to why I stopped giving reviews so much power. Because at the end of the day, a review is only an opinion, and everyone can have different ones, of course. Now, I absolutely hate user reviews, and the main reason why is because user reviews tend to be extremely subjective. For example, we have users here reviewing the game based only on one thing they didn't like. Some users even mentioned parts of the game that they enjoyed and still gave it a 0, which makes no sense. Video games are art, in the same vein as music, television, and movies, and they should be treated as such. People love to complain about things because it didn't go the way they wanted it to, and it's sad, really. At the end of the day, that's why I don't really care about what other people say. At least reviewers that are a part of a bigger outlet give a more fair opinion, pointing out pros and cons alike, as opposed to just focusing on one aspect of the game. A review outlet can at least see, hey, I might not like the story of the game, but the gameplay was awesome. I had a blast playing the game, but because of the story, it wasn't that good. I would give it a 5 out of 10, which is, it's fair for anybody to say, because at the end of the day, that's their opinion. Now, this is my personal take, and it's gonna have huge spoilers, so consider yourself warned. Now, me personally, I learned a lesson in life that if you go into things with expectations, you will be disappointed. Therefore, I went into this game with absolutely no expectations story-wise. I absolutely expected the story not to be as good as the first, and in my opinion, it wasn't, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Now, the story starts off with Ellie and Joel living in Jackson, in the settlement that Maria, Tommy's wife, has set up. We see Jackson being prosperous and running well. Joel is out on a run, which, means they were scouting the area for dangers. And they come across somebody that was being chased by a horde. This person is Abby, which, you guys are, if you're watching this, you're either familiar with it or you just don't care. Or listening, I should say. But Joel and Tommy save her. And Abby leads them towards the hideout where the rest of her friends were hiding. In the hideout, they find out his name. And because, they simply introduce themselves. At the end of the day, they were caught in a pickle. Now, this is the first thing that people love to criticize, but they fail to realize that it was a completely human mistake. Yes, Joel isn't trusting on people, but there's a horde and a blizzard around, and they had no choice but to hide with them for a short time. Tommy is being much more open, which we got to remember that Tommy has been in Jackson for longer, so his kind of mentality isn't the same as Joel, really, because Joel was, a smuggler, as we all know, so he was naturally untrusting of people, while Tommy was in Jackson, after he left the Fireflies or everything like that. Shortly after, Ellie finds Joel as he's being tortured and stares at Abby, vowing to kill her. Ellie goes to Seattle, where they believe the Washington Liberation Front is located, and she goes on a hunt for these people whilst trying to find Tommy, which left before her. You play 3 days as Ellie as she uncovers the motives for the attack until she gets intercepted by Abby. The same 3 days you play as Abby as she discovers that her friends are being killed and who's behind it. She goes after those people, and now Abby beats the brakes out of Ellie, and she kills 2 of her friends, or at least she thought she did, because she ended up not really killing Tommy, and was ready to kill Dina, but Lev stopped her. Ellie takes Dina and Tommy back, and almost a year later, Ellie and Dina make a life, and when Tommy finds out that they have a lead on Abby, he presents it to Ellie. Now, Ellie, obviously at this point suffering from PTSD, and just like anyone that's having trouble, thinks that there's a clear-cut way of fixing it. She thinks killing Abby will do that. So Ellie goes to California to find Abby, but doesn't kill her. Why? Because she realized how she is exactly the same as Abby. Ellie and Abby have the exact same loss of a father figure. They both set out on a revenge path to find a person who did so. Ellie, being a sensible person, doesn't kill her, just like Abby was a sensible person by not killing Ellie twice. I think, personally, the story makes sense. While some people might argue about some plot holes here and there, they fail to realize the greater purpose of the story. We have some people believing that they have some kind of political agenda with the Lev storyline, or with the Dina and Ellie storyline, with them, making that family at the end. But those stories were so insignificant to the greater purpose that the only reason people point it out is because they disagree with the philosophy of it. One could argue, well, the Dina and Ellie thing was such a big deal. Well, would it have made a difference if she was with Jesse at that point and they had a family then? It didn't make a difference. She made a family. She's living a happy life, and Tommy comes back with old news. In fact, Lev was the reason why your precious Ellie is still alive. People failed to realize that neither side was perfect, and both sides had their own beliefs that they fought for. But it just so happens that they were on opposing sides. Now, do I wish that Joel played a more active role? Yes. Do I think the story could have been told better? Yes. But that doesn't mean the story is bad. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The story was really, really good. I just don't like how people throw away things that they don't agree with. But that doesn't mean that the story is bad. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The story was really, really good. I just don't like how people throw away things that they don't agree with. Gameplay. Now, the gameplay for this was not vastly improved from the first one. This means that if you liked the gameplay for the first game, you're going to like the gameplay for the second game. They added a lot of quality tweaks to improve and streamline the combat, and a lot of it makes the gameplay that much more enjoyable. The jump button was somewhat useless, and as the times that you use them, you use it in the same way that you would have Joel jump in the first game. A lot of the time you would be in an edge and you're running off the edge and you press X to jump, just like you would in the first game. A lot of the time, it wasn't really necessary, I would say, but it makes sense, I guess. You didn't really use the jump button too much because there wasn't really, areas where you would really need it too much, but at the end of the day, it was there. What I love the most about the gameplay is the verticality of it. So many levels are expertly crafted to allow the player to play an encounter in any way they choose. Some encounters you can even miss if you don't explore certain areas, or even you can purposefully sneak away from them. The prone button added more options of hiding and maneuvering around the environment. The crafting system is expanded upon, and it makes it that much more satisfying to upgrade your weapons by being able to actually see, Ellie do the little animation where she changes the weapon and then it actually cosmetically changes the weapons here and there, which makes it more satisfying. The new enemy type in the game, the Shambler, adds, a nice dynamic to finding a horde around. I like the Shambler because it's not like fighting a huge tank like a bloater, but something believable as a step before that. And then the Rat King, I think the Rat King was just like a one-off. I don't think we're ever gonna see the Rat King ever again. The way it was presented in the game, it felt like it was a unique kind of way of it to happen. Like, they were all stuck together, and it happened because of the virus. I don't think we'll ever see another Rat King, to be honest. As a sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, as a sequel, does a decent job in expanding the lore and setting up a world in which you can have many different stories, which is where I can see the series going on into the future. Considering the Rumors Faction standalone game that we will hopefully get, I personally I loved Factions in the first game. I loved Factions MP. I loved the little meta game that you played, having to do these encounters, and you have to get a certain amount of kills, or you have to find a certain amount of parts. I really enjoyed that meta game, and if it's expanded upon and given to us in a nice little standalone package, I would not mind at all. As long as it's good, of course. Unfortunately, the game did feel a bit unnecessary to continue the story of Ellie, especially after the ending ended in such a melancholic tone, where the first game ended in a much more hopeful-ish, I guess, way, where, we saw Ellie and Joel go to a peaceful place, which is what we all want for characters that we like. I feel like the ending played a huge role in people's reviews, and it sees Ellie, live her greatest fear of being alone by having Dina leave at the end. But I digress. At the end of the day, if you like the first game, if you're a fan of the survival genre, and if you like a good story, you will enjoy this game. I think it absolutely deserves praises, and I believe it to be worth its price tag. Unfortunately, or maybe not so much, I felt like it falls in the vein of El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie, where you got to see what happened to Jesse from Breaking Bad, not from The Last of Us. It was nice to see old friends and see what they've been up to, but I felt like in the long run, it wasn't really needed. I go by Jimmie Silver. Thanks for watching.